Well, we're about a minute after, so let's go ahead and get started. Just to reintroduce myself again, my name is Megan Hurdle. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat at California Natural Resources Agency. Incredibly grateful that you are all choosing to spend your lunch hour with us learning more about cutting the green tape and permit streamlining tools for ecosystem restoration. A few quick housekeeping notes. So this event is being recorded. By joining this meeting, you are agreeing to that recording. And we will be posting this session on our website, at least the main segments of this, not the breakout rooms, so that people can join later and watch it and really get the background on the restoration management permit. Another thing for folks to know that this is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar. So this is a little bit different than the ones we've done in the past. And we're structuring it this way so that during the breakout sessions, you'll be able to unmute yourself and take yourself and put yourself on the camera to be able to ask questions of the experts that we have here today. But for now, just know that your camera and your microphone are muted. And so please be aware of that. And when you do come off mute for the breakout sessions, just be aware that any noise or things in the background will be heard by all. So I think we can all manage that after many years of doing Zoom meetings. So we are very excited today to be hosting this fourth webinar in our Cutting the Green Tape series. This series started off in early December with a Secretary Speaker series that was hosted by the California Natural Resources Agency Secretary Wade Crowfoot. And since we've had two more technical webinars, one on CEQA pathways and one on permit streamlining for multiple benefit projects. And if you missed those, don't worry, you can find those on our 30 by 30 website, which is californianature.ca.gov. I would encourage you to go back and use those as reference tools. And there's a lot of great information there about how to use these permit streamlining techniques. One of the things that we have heard in our effort to increase the pace and scale of ecosystem restoration is that there's more of a need for technical information to be shared with practitioners. And so today's meeting is an attempt to do just that. So we're going to hear a little bit from Brad Henderson about the new restoration management permit. And then we're going to spend some time in breakout sessions where you will actually have access to experts in permit streamlining to ask them your questions and to get more information. And this series is incredibly timely. So we are about halfway through California's 30 by 30 initiative. And this is the goal to conserve 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030 to keep the places, plants, and animals that make California unique in place, to help us respond and be resilient to climate change, and to really increase the ability of all people to get out and experience nature. We are at about 25.2% of lands and 16.2% of coastal waters conserved. We have a lot more to do before 2030, and a big piece of that is making sure that those lands are restored and that they have ecosystem function. To get there, we're going to need to increase the pace and scale of restoration, and that's exactly the goal of Cutting the Green Tape. So very excited to be here today. I do want to take a moment again to thank all of you for joining, to thank our experts who are joining today, share their time and expertise, and also to give a big shout out and thanks to those behind the scenes that manage the content, the technical side, and all of the registration for this. So with that, I'm very excited to welcome onto the screen Kellex Nelson, who will be our facilitator for this meeting. I know many of you know Kellex. She has been a leader in the Cutting the Green Tape effort for a long time. She's with the San Mateo Resource Conservation District and also California Landscape Stewardship Network. And Kellex, one of the things I love about having you as a facilitator for this series is you are also a practitioner. And one of your projects was the first project to be authorized under the new restoration management permit. So with that, I will pass the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us another round, everyone. It's great to see so many here today. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. And yes, as Deputy Secretary Hurdle was saying, this webinar is part of a series, and this has been a sort of deeper dive into specific tools, some new, some less new, for efficient regulatory compliance to advance restoration. In the first webinar, we focused on CEQA, the categorical exemption for small-scale habitat restoration projects, as well as the new statutory exemption for restoration projects through the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the programmatic EIR that can be used with the State Water Board's new State Restoration General Order. In our last webinar, we explored how to bundle permits across multiple agencies for different types of projects. And there was really deep interest from many of you in continuing this type of essentially technical assistance further. So we designed this final webinar to continue to dive more deeply into these topics, particularly around some of the feedback that you gave us about what is interesting to you. When you registered for this webinar, we asked you what permits, project types, or other elements of restoration permitting would you like to see discussed in this final webinar? And there were a large number of you that talked about things having to do with water, wetlands, floodplains, riparian, et cetera. There were a number of you who just kind of wanted general introduction or overview of what tools are available. There were a number of you that were interested in really just getting to know the RMP, the new restoration management permit. There were some of you who had specific one-off questions here that we've tried to incorporate into what people will be talking about today. And so we tried to, where there was the most energy and the most questions, create the breakout groups around those things. So today we're going to hear from Brad Henderson from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. He's the program manager for Cutting the Green Tape, and he's going to give a presentation about the new restoration management permit. And then after that, we'll go into these breakout rooms on the RMP. General permitting questions and permitting for water-related projects. We know that some of you expressed interest in other items. For those who want to better understand CEQA pathways like SERP, the statutory exemption, there's in the chat, there's links to recordings, or there will be, of that webinar. It looks like Stephanie already put a link in, but Stephanie, just maybe, since some people joined after that, if you don't mind reposting that link. And you can watch the first webinar in this series for more information and resources. We also have with us today staff from the California Coastal Commission who will be in 2 of the breakout rooms for coastal zone related questions. So Brad, great to see you as always. And I will go off screen while you present a little bit about the restoration management permit. Then I'll come back on screen and ask you a couple questions about that.
Great, thanks so much, Kellex. And let me just get myself set up here to share, make sure that that's all working, and get my everything loaded. How are we looking?
Looks good.
We're good. All right. All right. So thank you so much, Kellex. Thanks everyone working on this behind the scenes and in front of the scenes for giving us this venue and forum to talk about something new and exciting. I'm Brad Henderson. It's a pleasure to be here today. I work for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the Cutting the Green Tape program manager, and today I'm going to be spotlighting CDFW's new restoration management permit. Cutting the Green Tape is a statewide effort to increase the pace, scale, and quality of habitat restoration. We do this by creating and implementing new and efficient grant funding and environmental permitting tools. This provides enhanced synergy between funding, grant management, project design, CEQA, and permitting. CGT-funded positions manage grants, assist with project design and implementation, prepare permits, and also help with environmental review. By deploying new and efficient procedures over the past few years, Grants Branch has awarded over $300 million in grants quickly and efficiently. The CGT program began in November 2021. I like to think of our CGT permitting tools almost like another type of grant. Efficient, targeted permitting supports good projects by freeing up time and money so more resources can be directed to work on the ground. The new RMP is our latest recovery tool and will be the focus of today's presentation. But remember that our CGT-funded regional staff also work on restoration CDs, HREA approvals, and SERP CEQA exemptions. So let's start by clearing up any confusion. From 2019 till the end of 2024, CDFW was using the original or OG restoration management permit. The original RMP authorized restoration and recovery take under existing laws, the California Endangered Species Act and the Fully Protected Species statutes. The original RMP was great, but there were limitations. For example, a single project might need additional CDFW permits on top of an RMP. Most commonly, this was a lake or stream alteration agreement, or LSAA, And that LSAA had notification fees, which could sometimes be a pretty large fiscal impact for certain projects, especially larger projects with multiple work areas across the landscape. To truly cut green tape and support recovery, we realized that we needed a more comprehensive permit. In his 2021 Cutting the Green Tape memo, Secretary Crowfoot provided additional inspiration by directing CDFW to look for ways to consolidate and combine permits to advance options for large-scale restoration projects. Here's something to consider. CDFW has a large number of regulatory responsibilities related to biodiversity, more than any other agency. On top of this, we have several different categories of protected species governed by different laws. This is a lot of complexity to manage. Options for combining these permits were limited, and it became clear that the only viable option was pursuing new legislation. This brings us to the RMP Act, which was signed into law last year. The RMP Act represents a new chapter, both literally and figuratively, and is one of the most significant steps forward in institutionalizing cutting green tape on a permanent basis. The RMP Act provides significant new restoration permitting authority and codifies the restoration management permit as an official CDFW permit. The new RMP combines up to 5 types of CDFW authorizations, falling into 2 general buckets. The first bucket is take authorization for what we're calling RMP covered species. The second bucket is RMP covered water bodies, authorization for work in rivers, streams, and lakes. Specifically, the RMP can authorize take of listed species under the California Endangered Species Act, take of fully protected species, take of rare plants protected via the Native Plant Protection Act, take of species otherwise protected by the Fish and Game Code. For example, Fish and Game Code Section 2000, which includes species of special concern. We've opened this door in part to provide a pathway for restoration projects that would otherwise need to obtain a scientific collection permit. And finally, the new RMP would authorize substantial alterations to rivers, streams, or lakes. Remember that this is brand new authority, meaning that the new RMP is not tied to CDFW's pre-existing permitting authorities. The new RMP was also designed to complement other agencies' efficient permitting mechanisms. And there is language actually in the new RMP encouraging synergy between these other permits and the RMP. Now that you know a little bit about what the RMP can do, let's discuss how projects can qualify. This requires becoming familiar with a new term, the Qualifying Restoration Project. Qualifying restoration projects are eligible for the RMP, and if you have one, nice work. What is a qualifying restoration project? First, a qualifying restoration project is a management and/or propagation project as defined in the Act. Management is an activity like restoration that will benefit, conserve, and assist in recovery. Propagation helps to sustain or increase native species populations. Second, a qualifying restoration project's primary purpose is restoration. And third, CDFW determines that the project will result in a substantial net benefit above baseline conditions. A substantial net benefit directly or indirectly assists in the recovery of native species or habitats. We believe that we're going to discover many different ways that projects can achieve a substantial net benefit, and this will always be based on the specific details of a project and its setting. Here's more on RMP eligibility. A qualifying restoration project can originate in a bunch of different ways. Examples include a grant-funded restoration project carried out by an NGO or tribe, a public agency's project, a private party's project, a restoration project serving as mitigation, and even a restoration project required to remediate a violation, and likely more. A restoration with secondary or incidental benefits may also qualify for the RMP, such as certain multi-benefit projects. There are no project types that are disqualified from using the RMP as long as the eligibility criteria are met. RMPs for restoration programs are also possible when that makes sense and can save some time. And finally, there's no upper size limit for a qualifying restoration project, so we want you to go big. CDFW is test driving the new RMP this year. Please keep in mind that interest is high and staff capacity may be limited in some parts of the state. Early RMP consultation is initiated in our CDFW regions with help from headquarters, very similar to what we do for CERP. Our goal is that RMPs are compatible with permits issued by other agencies. Incorporation by reference and recycling measures from other permits will help us meet this goal. Application items are found right in the statute, and the team is always happy to review draft applications. Applying is easy, and it's currently free, folks. While compensatory mitigation would only very rarely be included in any RMP conditions, you should expect to see reasonable avoidance and minimization measures in RMPs. RMPs will be typically prepared and approved within our CDFW regions. Our initial RMP processing time goal is no more than 120 days, and we hope to shorten this time frame like we have for CERP. And like any other discretionary permit, CEQA compliance is needed, and any CEQA options may be considered, including the things that were discussed at the last event in this series. But please visit our website to learn more about the RMP, read the statute, or browse the FAQs. And we've barely scratched the surface today, so please reach out to our regional Cutting the Green Tape support staff to discuss your project. And I'll wrap this up with on a high note, by sharing some exciting news. The first RMP has been issued for the Little Butano Fish Passage and Habitat Enhancement Project. That RMP was issued to San Mateo RCD on April 4th of this year. The project restores fish passage, installs large wood structures, creates pools, and reconnects floodplains. And the RMP authorized take for 3 of the categories that we just talked about, and a total number of 10 covered species. This included fish, turtles, frogs, salamanders, and even a wood rat. And this RMP also authorized impacts to streams, making this RMP 4 permits in 1. Bravo. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to discussing the RMP for your project. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, bravo. As someone who's a recipient of this and wearing my Cutting the Green Tape shirt today, thank you and your team for all of your work on that. I do have a couple of questions for you that I've heard from practitioners and others around the state. One is, how might the RMP be used to help ensure consistency in protective measures for species across California Endangered Species Act, Federal Endangered Species Act, including some of the programmatic biological opinions?
Great. Yeah, in 2 ways, really. First, there's going to be internal consistency because we are lumping all of our permits into 1. So that helps with our own internal consistency. And then secondly, the act itself actually talks about how we can incorporate conditions from other permits and how applicants are encouraged to tell us about those other permits and those conditions. We've been working with Sustainable Conservation as well to get a master list of all of those conditions associated with SRGO, with the programmatic biological opinions and so forth. And we have a database of those. And so it's really going to be a collaboration and working together, but that's our goal. Is to not give you an impossible situation where you have different permits with different conditions and you can't do your project. Hopefully that will not be happening anymore.
And I would imagine also it's really also incumbent upon those of us who are the applicants to communicate and say, hey, we're getting these different messages. Can you all work it out? Or talk to you like the humans that you are.
Absolutely.
And then another question I have for you is a little bit, if you can kind of speak to one of the topics that 1 or 2 people said that were of interest to them is about whether the RMP can be used for public access projects. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, so remember, you have to have a qualifying restoration project to get an RMP. And one of the first things is that the primary purpose of your project is restoration. It doesn't say the exclusive purpose of your project is restoration. And so we see this all the time. Many projects, especially on public land or in the coastal zone, absolutely are going to include public access, and that's okay. That is part of why the definition of qualifying restoration project was crafted the way it is, your project's mostly restoration and it has a substantial net benefit above baseline, having some public access or some other things is definitely going to be part of future RMPs and will be a little easier to navigate than CERP, where the statute is a little more strict. So we definitely wanted to build that in.
Thank you. And then another question that comes up all the time, you spoke to this a bit in your presentation, but maybe you can just kind of put it to bed for us. Mitigation, yes or no?
Right. So projects can originate as mitigation or many, many other ways. And so that was definitely by design, and part of what we wanted to do was create a pathway for those very, very important mitigation projects that need to happen and need to be scaled up and done more quickly. And so hopefully this will help increase the pace and scale not only of grant funded projects, but also mitigation projects.
Thanks, Brad. I'd love to invite Amy Kaiser onto the screen. If you might join us. Hello.
Hello.
Amy Kaiser is at San Mateo RCD, which is where I work as well. And Amy, you were the first applicant for an RMP. And this was for the project that Brad highlighted at the end, that Fish Passage and Riparian Restoration project. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about how the timeline or costs compared to your estimates of what the timeline and costs would have been without the RMP for that project?
Sure. Yeah. Without the RMP, we're planning to do a lake and stream bed alteration agreement and a consistency determination for the coverage that we needed for the project. And we think that we saved about a month of time and about $7,500, maybe more. That probably increased for other project types.
What do you mean it might increase for other project types? Meaning if that is a project that the permitting would have been less expensive than some others?
Yeah, that it might have saved additional funding for other project types.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what the process was like? How did the process compare to more standard permitting?
Yeah. Well, it was the first one, so we didn't have a form or a template to fill out. But we were able to have a pre-application consultation with the Kayla Green team. So I got to talk with Brad and Jen and Desiree about what it meant to use the new RMP. And that was really, really helpful. Brad described the process as he did here, but in more detail, and we were able to ask a lot of questions. So that was really productive about how to provide the right information in a hopefully easy to review format. And we ended up using the legislation as a template for that. And then as we were drafting the permit materials and throughout the whole process, we were able to meet and ask questions of Desiree. And that was super helpful. It added a lot of clarity and transparency to the process instead of just kind of shooting off some documents into a black box. And so I think, yeah, it really made it feel collaborative, and we were able to clarify things along the way to ensure that the language was clear and actionable for both sides. And then you talked about this with Brad, but we were also able to make sure that our measures were consistent across the NOAA and Fish and Wildlife Service programmatic biological opinions as far as species measure and take. So that was really helpful. And then, yeah, we had our permit.
And can you tell us a little bit about how that happened? How did you ensure that you had consistent terms across NOAA, Fish and Wildlife Service, and the RMP?
Yeah, we provided those measures that we had for the PBO that we were already planning to use as part of our application. And then we used consistent take numbers as well. And CDFW in our final permit essentially just adopted those terms or amended them where appropriate. But for the most part, it was just accepting those terms for this permit.
Got it.
That was really, really helpful.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to be going to our breakout rooms. And oh, I was just going to say, we had a little excitement behind the scenes here that Brad's computer crashed, but he's back just in time to go to the breakout rooms. So no webinar is complete without someone's computer crashing or losing Wi-Fi or something. So yeah, thank you for that, Amy. And then Brad, one last question for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share from the Cutting the Green Tape Strike team, or anything about how SERP is going, or anything else before we make that transition to the breakout rooms?
Yeah, just really quickly, thank you so much, especially Amy for, really bearing with us. This was the first time we've ever tried anything like this. So I'm glad that the experience was good overall for you. And just remember that we're going to be learning as we go. We learned so much doing the first RMP. We've got a few others coming, and things get better and better over time as we learn a new skill, and that's really what we're doing. And so please bear with us. We're learning, and we're spread thin, so we're just doing our best. But come talk to us, tell us about your project. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thank you also, Amy, for trying, saying, okay, there isn't a template yet. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to try. I'm going to offer something, and being a partner to the department. Appreciate that. Brad, any other news from Lake Wobegon, or anything that you wanted to share about the Cutting
It's
Green
not
Tape
been a
Strike
quiet
team?
week in Lake Wobegon, but I'll mention in SERP something really exciting has happened, and that is that the director signed the first ever programmatic SERP concurrence. And so that is for a restoration program within the Ventura River watershed. And so what that means is that instead of each little project having to come and get a separate SERP concurrence, there has been one blanket SERP concurrence, and then the Ventura County RCD will be administering that program, and anyone can come in and enroll and get that CEQA coverage to do their part. And it's a very ambitious goal to actually eliminate Arundo from the Ventura watershed. People don't typically make a claim that they're going to eliminate Arundo, but I think they actually have a shot. And so
Oh,
glad
that's
to be
exciting.
that.
That is actually very exciting. Thank you. So now what we're going to do for you all is we're going to open up to 3 different breakout rooms in focus topics that you brought forward during your registration. One is going to be with Brad and Jen Olson from CDFW, understanding the RMP more, for those of you who want more specific information about the RMP. A second breakout room is going to be focused on water-centric projects like wetlands restoration, floodplain restoration, riparian habitats, stream flow restoration, off-stream storage, that sort of thing. That room is going to include Jim Robbins, a highly experienced restoration practitioner with decades of experience with all of these permits, Jake Shannon from a Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Matt Clifford from Trout Unlimited. And that will also include a staff person from the Coastal Commission, in case any questions come up pertaining to that. The third room is going to be general technical assistance for taking more streamlined approaches to restoration permitting, and an introduction or overview of the myriad tools. And that is with Erica Lovejoy and Katie Haldeman from Sustainable Conservation, and staff from the Coastal Commission will be available in that breakout room as well. So in just a moment, you're going to be invited to choose one of these breakout rooms. That part of today's program will not be recorded. And then for those of you who are watching this recorded later and not here in real time, time is going to pass before you see us again. Deputy Secretary, if there's anything that you would like to wrap up or send us on our way, I'd love to invite you back on the screen.
Our number one rule of show business is, keep them hanging on so they come back for more. So I think Brad helped us achieve that. Thank you all so much for joining this webinar today. Again, thank you for the experts who joined and shared their expertise and their information. And one key takeaway that I hope everyone has is that there are many people that are willing to think through your questions with you, both within the state agencies and also in the practitioner community. This is an amazing network. Take advantage of it. One last announcement. So we have announced our 30 by 30 annual summit. It will be this year in Southern California in San Diego, August 14th and 15th. So please mark your calendars. We will be releasing registration for that shortly. It sells out every year, and would love to see many of you there to continue this conversation and continuing doing great work on the ground. So with that, thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful day.